ended up doing diplomatic security and guarding embassies for about 4 years. Essentially, that means I got to sit behind a computer, have unfettered access to a lot of really cool information, and just study and kind of go on my own educational journey. I see my wife in the audience that's telling me not to be sharing all this stuff. So this is about 2001, I remember. I was in Sudan, and this is when I first heard about Bitcoin, which is what's really relevant to this conversation we're having today. So I'm not going to tell you something I was about to tell you. Long story short, that's when I first figured out about it, but I didn't get really sucked into Bitcoin and blockchain then, because I kind of saw Bitcoin repeating a lot of the same patterns that our old culture had. Like concentrated wealth, it was wasting a lot of electricity, it was based off waste, so I didn't get really excited about it. But having been to Afghanistan, seeing what we were doing in Sudan, and kind of seeing the U.S. empire writ large and how they were affecting the world, I knew I didn't want to be part of that system anymore. So this is when I started, looking into alternatives to setting up civilization. I got really into eco-villages and permaculture, and when I got out of the Marines about 2013, my plan at that time was get my friends together, start a nonprofit, move to Central America, buy up some land, and we're going to grow our own food, and we're going to build our own village. We don't want to raise kids in this culture. We don't think it's heading very, in a good direction, so we're going to head in our own direction. So that was a whole other journey where we bought 26 acres of broadleaf rainforest. There's howler monkeys on our property and abandoned Mayan ruins. We found some really cool pottery shards, and it was just a really cool adventure. But fortunately, the real estate agent there was playing a scam, and we couldn't actually buy the land, and we ended up losing a bunch of money. I say fortunately because had that worked out, I'd be living in the middle of a rainforest in Central America right now and kind of living off grid and growing our own food, and maybe that'd be a great thing, maybe not. So after that failed, I also went into, okay, how do these things succeed? What do you actually need to be able to get a group of people together, to make decisions together, to live together, to handle conflict, to manage resources? How do you do a tribe? We don't really learn about these things growing up. So I started studying intentional communities, got into a whole bunch of, eco-villages throughout Central America, learned more about permaculture, got certified that, kind of studied nature, how that works, and this is when I got into some of the medicine work happening in Central America, and also fasting, breath work, cacao, and all these different ways to access non-ordinary states of consciousness. Started exploring that a lot more. Taking a step back, the reason I mentioned Bitcoin is because that's what's kind of funded this whole exploration. I think it's a proof-in point of how a universal basic income could work. Because it kind of helped me not have to think about how to make money. I was pretty young, and I can go and just study what I was passionate about, what my purpose was, and follow and pursue that without having to think of how do I monetize this? Because I had my own income coming in, so I could just explore and create. So that's what gave me unfettered access to just dive into how does an intentional community get set up, and not have so much skin in the game with the outcome being how do I monetize this, but rather I'm just really deeply curious about this, and this is something I know that could benefit humanity if we could improve upon it.
So there's a few things I want to firstly give you a chance to grab some water, give Cece a chance to smile. I know, but it's all good, brother. This is why we're here, because the questions actually don't necessarily need to be answered. It's what it triggers, and what it triggers is supposed to come up, and that's the container, right? But I want to thank you, because I just thought of a new word, right? It just popped in my head as you were talking, and I want to try this one on the side, and that word is hyperlectual. Right? Hyperlectual. Not to be confused with hyperlectual, but you can use it if you like, that's fine. So why do I bring it up, hyperlectual? You heard it here first. So why do I bring it up? So the way which I see you, right, is a person who, so we'll take the intellectual route first. So what I love about you is that intellectually, you're one of the most, what I would call gifted people that I've met. And I've met quite a few people, right? That's the first thing. But the second thing, which you delivered first, which is super important, is giving you context to everybody who's watching now. And that context is that you had unfettered access to see how the world really works. And, again, through being a soldier, going through it that way, you saw something very, very important. And the second thing you mentioned as well, you saw something being in the diplomatic corps and having that access via computer, internet, and all the rest of that. So these are two really important things, because then, out of that I connect with you more about how where is your why, right? And I connect with that reason, because you understood both. So taking those 2 points forward, if you like, so then I can see the road or the trajectory that then you're coming through as well, right? And the beautiful thing about you is that, a lot of intellectuals talk about it but don't do anything. Right? Now, I call you a hyperlectual. We're going to change to hyperlectual, because you've actually chosen to do something about it, and you've created something really quite special. So let's jump straight to that now. So let's talk a little bit about Hypha and what it is, where it started, and what was behind it.
Yes, awesome. I do want to take a small aside. You said I got to see how the world really works.
Yeah.
I didn't. I got to see a couple perspectives of some games that are being played on our world right now.
Yeah.
How our world really works, I don't think any human really understands that. So I think approaching it with that level of humility is really beautiful, because that helps us understand we can design different ways to interact with our world. There is no truth to the matter necessarily. A lot of it is what we make up. So now answering your question with Hypha. Hypha, we call it a decentralized human organism or organization, or decentralized holonic organization. That's just a lot of big words that mean nothing if you don't know what they mean. It's something that exists nowhere but kind of everywhere. So there's no legal entity to it. It's an organization of a group of a couple hundred people across the globe trying to build open source tools to build a different type of economy. So taking this all many steps back, I got to give a little bit more context, sorry.
Don't be sorry, but remember, this is all about what it triggers, right?
Yeah.
So it's supposed to come up. It's good.
So when I was thinking that an alternative to civilization is just building new villages, growing up and raising that way, it was kind of an escapist mentality, because it's the belief that we could build an island that would, survive while the rest of the world was collapsing. I think that's very much a lie. So where Hypha and Seeds, which is what Hypha has been working on building, where that came to be is our current economic and financial systems are what's destroying our world. If we don't solve the root problem, which is how they coordinate our behaviors and activities, then we're not going to solve any of it. We can't keep putting Band-Aids on it, right? Or we can't run away and just think that we can go start our own eco-village and everything's going to be okay. That's not going to be the case. So Seeds is a new financial system that's owned by nobody. It just exists out there in the cloud. It's powered by blockchain, which really just means that people can verify what's actually happening in that system. So in our U.S. dollar system, the Pentagon can lose $11 trillion and nobody knows what happened to it. That's an enormous amount of money. That was actually is a headline right before 9/11 happened that, hey, $11 trillion went missing. And there's a whole accounting department at the Pentagon focused on figuring that one out. Whatever, I think everyone listening to this is fine. But that accounting department is actually what one of the planes that during 9/11 actually hit and killed everyone that was, trying to look into what was happening with this $11 trillion, right? Yeah, I know, sorry, babe. She tells me to stay away from these types of things. Point is that's all a product of our current financial system. We're allowed to lose $11 trillion. We're allowed to, fund the big banks that are destroying our world. We're allowed to do all these things that aren't serving humanity because nobody can see it. So we need to build a different type of financial system that brings everything into the open so we can see what's going on, but also allowed us to coordinate our activities differently. Right now, we're spending $5.4 trillion in a single year subsidizing oil and gas companies, making them cheaper than renewable energy so we can keep messing up our planet cheaper. It makes no sense. We need to be putting money towards the things that matter. So that's how we approach this. Okay, well, we need to build a different type of financial system. Great. And if this is really going to be powered by the people and fully decentralized, the company behind it needs to also be completely decentralized and not exist anywhere, so that no entity can come and say, hey, shut this down, and tell someone to shut it down. No one should be able to shut it down. No one should be able to be in control of it. So in order for that to be true, we needed to have a decentralized organization, which is what Hypha is. So Hypha is a product of, hey, we built Seeds, this financial system. How do we make sure that we're not legally liable to anything that's happening here? Well, we need to not exist anywhere legally either. Well, great. Well, how do we actually pay each other if we don't have a bank account? Well, now we're going to have to figure out decentralized ways of paying each other. So we went down this whole route of like, how do we, exist without a bank account? How do we make, pay salaries and all that? How do we exist without one person being in control of paying those salaries? So no one can say like, hey, we want to shut this down, stop paying salaries, we're going to put you in jail. So we needed to make sure that no one could be put in jail, like nothing bad, could happen to this organization and it would still exist kind of indefinitely. So that's the idea behind decentralization, is that there's no place to actually shut it down. So if you do start stepping up against a system that's not serving humanity anymore and needs to stop, it still has its immune system where it tries to shut down healthy alternatives. So we needed to make sure that we could survive any attacks from, that system that needs to go away. So that's kind of what Hypha is. Maybe that explains something, maybe it doesn't. But then Hypha is just a group of people that are focused on, new ways of doing governance, new ways of organizing ourselves, and new ways of creating financial and economic systems. So it's a lot of researchers, it's storytellers, it's people focused on regeneration and, really curious about how can we build a different type of culture that really serves us and really serves our planet.
Thank you for explaining that. And look, the question that pops up for me, and I'm laughing because I've got an idea on what the answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So is there, if I ask you now, right, you've been working on this for some time, I get the sense that, that you may be a sort of person who doesn't really take time to smell the flowers, meaning this is what we've done. So people can, let me give us a bit of context. It's almost like, there are different sorts of people. One person could be a person which looks forward and says, well, this is my target, this is my goal, I'm so far away from it, fuck. There's so much more for me to do, right? Another person might look back and say, well, this is where we started, look how far we've come. Isn't that amazing? If we've come this far, I wonder in 5 or 10 years how much further we can go. So if I asked you, which one of those, if not both, you gravitate towards when we're thinking about Seeds and Hypha, how would you answer that?
Probably neither. I'm just approaching this with a very naive optimism that it's doable and not really trying to think too much about what needs to get done. That's paralyzing, and more just focus on the very next step that needs to happen, the one that's the most inspiring step in the moment, and just watching it unfold. Like, I kind of got into my journey, and part of it was all of this I didn't plan in advance. Like, ask me 10 years ago if I was going to be focused on building a new economic system, like that wasn't even something I could have fathomed at the moment, all of this is just an unfoldment of just taking the next step and seeing how it works. So we were having this discussion the other night about manifestation, and I think manifestation is incredibly powerful. It's like holding an image in your mind and projecting it as a future state and then being able to create that future state, right? But I think there's something that maybe transcends that a little bit, which is being able to figure out how to get into flow and not predicting where you're going, but watching it actually unfold, because then your world can get even better than anything you could have imagined at the time. Manifestation, you're going to get what you want. Maybe you're not going to get what you need, but if you can step into that kind of flow state and figure out how to just keep yourself aligned in that and not think too far in the future, then it unfolds. And then you see these things come apart, and then it's like, I'm constantly shocked by where I'm at in life because I didn't think about getting there. I just arrived there and was like, oh wow, this is intense. Then I try not to think about it too much because then it feels overwhelming, and then I have to take 2 weeks off and go fast in a cabin somewhere and ground myself. So it's a little bit of a definitely an ebbs and flow there, but yeah.
And so one of the most important parts of all of this, I think, is that any creation in a way can take part of the form of those who created it. Now I know this is decentralized, and it's that's part of its DNA is the fact that it's created by many every day, from what it sounds like, right? But what I like about you, another thing which I like about you, is that you have this ability to take yourself away from things to perhaps get back to your core and come back again. So you mentioned just then about the fasting. So do you care to share with us why you do it and what you find you can connect with?
Fasting is probably one of the things, along with certain plant medicines, that have had the most impact on my life and helping me steer where I'm going. Reason with fasting is it reduces the glucose in your body, which is what makes your brain run. So that monkey mind that's constantly going is just being fueled by everything we're eating. So you can find out after 7 days of fasting and your brain really, really slows down, that state that might take you an hour of focused meditation to glimpse upon, you get to just basically by closing your eyes. And then you start realizing that there's other neurons in your body that have their own consciousness and awareness too. People say gut feeling, your gut literally has neurons in it where it can communicate. It's got a brain down there as well, and it has thoughts. And you can hear those thoughts a little bit more. And the same thing with your heart. And you have different parts of your body that can communicate if you can get your brain to slow down enough to actually hear them. So that was really interesting when doing fasting, is getting into that second week of that, where you really get into the rhythm, you're more comfortable with it. You've gotten past the stage where your stomach tells you you're hungry. This is an aside with fasting. I think it's fascinating, but we think we're hungry when you hear our gut grumble. But that's not us being hungry. That's the bacteria in our guts that are hungry. They have a much shorter lifespan. They need to eat more frequently. So they're the ones that give us the cravings for sugar and different foods and feeling of hungry and the grumble and, getting hangry. When you're angry, it's them messing with your neurons in here to get you to be angry. And the only way of not them teasing you that way is to feed them. So you think this is something that's part of you, but it's really the bacteria that's in your gut. And you notice that more after you've gone through 4 days of fasting. You don't get hungry down here anymore, and they've died. And then once they all die down and you balance yourself, your internal gut, you start hearing oh, all those thoughts that I thought were mine aren't mine. It was a different entity, it was a different consciousness that was existing in me that I thought were my thoughts. Interesting. And you start understanding that relationship you have with these other beings that are living inside of you, giving you their thoughts, So it's great moving beyond that and actually getting more in touch with who you are. And that's where I think fasting has been incredibly helpful for me, is to be able to tap more into what my heart wants and what other elements of my body are saying.
Got it. And on that, so do you find that there's a connection between you and the land?
I mean, there's a connection between us and the land as much as there's a connection with my arm and my forehead, right? So I think it's a very weird thing where people talk about people and nature as if they're somehow separate. Yeah. Water is literally everywhere in the air and everything we're breathing. There's no end or beginning of water. It exists in the ocean and our bodies and us and everywhere. So there's no separation with water. It's not like a lake there and water and me. It's just a complete continuance of everything. It's the same with our breath. Every breath in is another breath out, and it's a complete cycle. So think of us as disconnected, I think, is just a product of our civilization that, came up with these illusions of separation, which they don't exist. Same thing with the bacteria in our gut. We kind of see them as one symbiotic unit, and we are. So we're one symbiotic unit with Earth, the same way this bacteria in our gut is a symbiotic unit with us. So
with the let's take the civilization route, right, which you brought up. So when thinking about or reflecting upon what civilization is, are there for you, some key elements of what makes a civilization work? And if so, what would you say they are, and how have you managed to coordinate those into seeds and Hypha and so on?
Civilization, if I think I'm going to break it down, it's just more of a form of scaling coordination. It's how do you scale human coordination? I think initially civilization was kind of structured by psychopaths wanting to scale coordination to build empires. And that's unfortunately what made the more successful ones, or the empires that grew and dominated all the other forms of civilization. So we only have one thread throughout history, which is really the most violent civilizations that kind of made it through. And then we got rid of all the other ones that were able to survive for thousands of years in a peaceful prosperity and existence, but we kind of removed them from history and pretended like they don't exist. So then now, looking back, we can project back and say, oh, humans are just inherently violent. That's how we are. We've always had war. It's no, this particular bloodline has always had that, but we've got rid of all the other examples. But either way, so civilization is just about scaling coordination. We originally did it to, scale to build empires. This is where currency comes in. This is where money comes in. There's a false belief that money was here to help serve barter, as if at one point in time we were like, hey, I have 2 carrots. I want your 1 chicken. That never really existed. There's no archaeological or anthropological records of that ever existing in any culture. because they didn't need to. Like, it's the same thing in our family units. We didn't barter between shoes and shirts. We just shared with each other. So there's a lot of really complex economies, like gift economies, or the Native Americans had this longhouse thing where all the resources of all the tribe came together, and then all the women sat together and said, oh, like, you need this, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that. So, like, they didn't have these barter systems. So anyway, that's just an illusion we made up. But either way, money was just there to scale coordination. So empires wanted to build armies. They didn't want to have to bring housing and food and everything they needed to feed and house that army with them. So what did they do? They came up with these tokens and said, oh, we need people to accept these tokens. Well, how are they going to do that? We're going to force them to, because we're going to tax them. So this is where originally money came from, and taxation actually came from, was, you know, empire building, wanting to fund and fuel armies, and how they, you know, got away with that. So that's kind of the root of money, but it worked really well. And the cultures that adopted this new technology were able to scale their culture, build massive civilization, and scale human coordination. So awesome, it was a powerful tool. So that's what I'm, you know, approaching money with right now, is this is a tool to scale coordination. What are we trying to coordinate around? Well, what's humanity's greatest crises? Well, we've got our ecological and climate crisis right now. Good, we need to actually solve that. We have inequality. We have countries all across the world right now protesting because they don't feel like their political systems are actually representing them. So we've got all these converging crises kind of coming to a culmination point where we have to, you know, radically change how we're coordinating to solve these problems. So I think this is where new types of money can come in, is if we say, okay, well, this tool is here to help us coordinate. What are we trying to coordinate around? Building a different type of civilization that could actually survive for the next 50 years. The trajectory of our current one's going to fail and collapse, and it's not going to be good for anyone. So we need to build viable alternatives. And this is really why I only care about focusing on money, because it's a really powerful tool to be able to, you know, help us coordinate on a level needed.
Yeah. So then, for those of you who don't know, so grab a. I know, but it's okay, man. We'll give you some more water in a second. So then, you know, some people here maybe have checked out Seeds already. Join seeds.com. And so, look, the currency part of it. How would you describe that to somebody who perhaps is just coming across it and have seen this thing called Seeds, that they know that it's blockchain based, the technology behind it. So how would you describe the currency of Seeds?
Ooh, awesome. I think what I've already done in this conversation is more of the deep dive rather than the surface level. Yeah. I'm going to stay at that level because I think it's more fascinating, so bear with me. So Seeds, we had to approach it with a couple different ways. Seeds is an alternative financial system. It also has a currency, which is called Seeds. But we couldn't just start off with what we felt like was a better way to coordinate by changing too many rules around how money works, right? Because then people are going to show up to it and be completely confused and not want to engage. We saw this with like the resource-based economy or the Venus Project or so many others. There's so many incredible ideas about how we can just radically change our economic systems that get no adoption because they're too different than what we're currently used to, right? And also, they don't have the same incentives. In our current money systems, we're always thinking about getting the best deal, you know, saving money, either making more money. So those are the incentives that drive that behavior. And these alternative systems oftentimes didn't have that, which is, again, why they didn't really get adoption. So this is how we approach Seeds, is recognizing where people are at today, like what really drives and motivates them today, but how that can get them onto a path to radically change how that money is affecting them and affecting the world around us. So with that in mind, we wanted to have a better than free currency. You know, because what's going to get people to stop using dollars? If I can hand you $5 and my debts are done, what's going to get me to go through the effort of downloading a wallet, figuring out a new financial system, to then send you money instead? Well, if we can make it better than free to send you money, that would be maybe a financial incentive to get you to do that. Same thing with accepting payments for merchants. Right now they're getting charged 3% off of revenue, which if their profit margins are 10% and they're taking 3% of that, that's a 30% cut out of your profits. Like, people don't understand how significant that 3% processing fee is, right? But if we could turn that around and be like, look, you can actually make more money taking payments than not, and this might be an alternative system that they would go through the effort of adopting. So this had to be the first thing, like, why are people actually going to adopt this new system? Like, we can't expect them to just do it because they want to make a better world, although if they want to do that too, that's great. We wanted to have a really clear financial incentive to do it as well. So that was at the heart of what, you know, created Seeds. Why? To give people context here, where Seeds really started from was someone was wanting to do a peer-to-peer local food system. Basically, Airbnb, put it on an app, people grow food, not lawns, they cook food out of their house, they sell it with each other, this app facilitates it. A lot of people have tried apps like this, and they all fail because if there's a 5% fee being taken to buy a pie from my neighbor, I'm just going to walk over there, hand them $5, buy the pie, and not use the app, right? This is what was happening. People are avoiding the apps, which is why they never got to scale. So our problem to solve was, how do we make using that app actually better than paying them cash? So this is how we started thinking, like, well, we need to have a better than free currency. Okay, cool. And then everyone always asks, okay, well, where does the money actually come from? So this is the second thing we had to solve. People weren't using Bitcoin because Bitcoin was going up in value, or it was too volatile. So people didn't want to use that as a currency. You would much rather spend your dollars, which are losing value, than you want to spend your Bitcoin, which is gaining value, right? We needed to have a currency that was actually stable in value, so that as demand was going up for that currency, the supply was going up. So the real price of that currency was stable, so that you actually wanted to use it to exchange with. Following? And then the final piece is, like, how do you make it better than free then? Is the new money that we're making when there's new demand for it to stabilize the price, this money we're just giving back to all the people in the system. So to help give context here, central banks made, oh man, I mean, it's going up so fast, but like at least $7 trillion last time I looked in the last year. 26% of all dollars that exist, actually that number again is still going up, were created last year. Like, the amount of new money being printed into existence and created right now is just staggering. People who use that currency, I use US dollars almost every day. I didn't get any of that money. I didn't get a say in if that money should be made. I didn't say where that money should be spent. I didn't get any, and that money typically went to go concentrate wealth and perpetuate our problems. So anyway, taking this all into account, we're using a similar system where we are creating new currency when there's new demand, so the value is stable, and then we take this new money to then reward all the different things we want in our new civilization. We want to just pay people to clean up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Good, we're going to do that. We want to pay people to plant gardens? Good, we can do that. We want to make platforms better than free so people start using them to do things that our planet actually needs? Great, we're going to start paying for that. So this is where the governance of seeds really comes in, is everyone who's in the platform gets to decide what we do with that new money, how we spend it, what do we want to coordinate our activities around, and it becomes this, infinite game that's always evolving, that the players are actually changing the rules of the game while they're playing it. So as we evolve, we can say, well, we need to solve our climate crisis. Maybe we're directing most of our new money towards planting trees and gardens and localizing our food systems and that sort of thing. Okay, but now that we've done that, how do we want to coordinate our behaviors? And we can continue to evolve how and where we're spending money and what we're rewarding. So it becomes really cool, because then we step into this new economic system that we're the creators of. And we can constantly evolve it and change it and interact with it so that it can continue to better meet our needs, while our current ones, they're not capable of doing that.
Got it. And so guys, if we can have some more water over here, Reiki's running out, that would be great. So some people here watching are really interested about the G word, right? Governance, right? So a lot of there we go, that's a little reminder. A lot of projects which are coming out at the moment are having some pretty strong challenges around the governance aspect of it. So when it comes to seeds and so on, so like we've spoken a little bit about this in the past, but which I love as well, but how do you approach that governance topic in this particular example?
Yeah, this is, we were giving a 101, and now you're trying to jump right up to a 301 level course right here.
Stay with me, brother.
Yeah, first and foremost, it needs to be decentralized. So that's the key of decentralized governance, is that no one is in the position to make decisions. Like, to help put this into context, a lot of people like blaming presidents, but that's just a product of an old system. If we have a system where a psychopath can have that much power, then we've set up a system to just perpetuate that problem. It doesn't do us any good blaming a psychopath for being a psychopath. It's our fault for allowing a psychopath to have that much control. So we need to get rid of systems where any one person can have that much power. So that's the whole point of decentralization, is there's no central points of power or control or manipulation, right? So that's the first thing to figure out, is how to technologically do that. So that's a whole other challenge in itself. That's what most of the space has been focused on for many years. Unfortunately, in most respects, we're there. So as far as decentralized governance goes, where it is fully decentralized, powered by people, you don't need a middleman to execute things. I'll give a little bit of context. So we need code where the literal code that's governing the platform can change without you having a person actually make that change. that's really cool, so that if a vote goes up and says, hey, we should change X to Y, and the people vote yes, we want that to change, that the code automatically updates that without there ever needing to be a person to make that change happen. So that's really, really cool, because then you literally get rid of any middlemen. You literally get rid of any points of failure where either an aggressor or someone who gets bought out or sold or whatever can alter the system in any harmful way, right? But that's just one level of all this. The more interesting level is the social dynamics that get into this. Like, are people actually prepared to be making decisions like that? What we actually find is a lot of people don't want to, take the time to really engage with it, because either one, it's just too complex, and we totally get that, or two, they're just not comfortable or used to self-governing. Our current civilization teaches people how to be slaves, really. It teaches people way better how to just take orders, sit in line, do what they're told, much more than it teaches them how to be self-authoring and governing and trying to figure out, complex problems and then give their voice to the table. So this is a whole other challenge, is helping people, step into their power, actually show up, share their voice, be part of that governance process, and realize that, they can affect this, which is something else that a lot of people don't realize too, is they're used to things like Facebook that say hey, you have a voice, but then just manipulate you and control you. They're not actually used to a system where they really do actually have a voice, and that they really can participate in it and change it, and what they say matters. So I think a big hurdle is just all the deconditioning and deprogramming we have to do from the old civilization to get people started. And then, of course, once you get started, we can start the entire we'll probably write an entire book on this, about different ways of doing governance. Like, people are used to voting, like you have a couple options, you say yes or no. That's a terrible way of doing sense-making and coordinating activities. There's so many more intricate and nuanced and joyful ways of going about coming to consensus and coming to alignment with a group of people. That's what's going to get really interesting as we come together and start, discovering these different ways of making decisions together. One experiment we're doing right now, just to kind of wrap this up, is, I like using this example. It's kind of grotesque, though. In the U.S., I had a really hard time passing gay rights, because there's a lot of people who weren't impacted by gay people having rights or being able to get married that had a say, and they got to say no, because there's no risk in them saying no. So kind of a bigoted majority were able to restrict the rights of a really dedicated minority. And I think that's a failure of governance. But you can imagine that if in one proposal cycle there's a vote to say, hey, should gay people be able to get married, or should we have gun rights? And at the same time, people actually had to choose between the different proposals. It might have had a completely different outcome. So what we've actually done with seeds is people earn these, we call them trust tokens. So everyone doesn't have the same voice. The more you contribute to the system, the more voice you get. So you earn these tokens that are called trust. And then in any proposal cycle, you have all these different proposals, and then you literally have to spend your tokens on the different proposals you want to support. So one, there's an opportunity cost on weighing on something that you have no opinion on, so that people are more directed towards the things they actually care about and that they probably actually have wisdom worth sharing. Also, you get to share the degree you care. Maybe I put one token here, but I really care about this, so I'm going to put 80 of my tokens on this thing, right? So it lets us actually get more nuanced with the things that we actually want to see passed, so we don't have a bigoted majority being able to restrict a really passionate minority, because that minority would have saved up all their tokens and really spent it to pass it. These are all just experiments. These are saying okay, how do we make simple tweaks in our current voting process to get exponentially different outcomes? This is one of those experiments. It's really important to keep highlighting this. The whole thing is just an experiment. We're definitely not approaching this from a perspective of we've got it figured out, this is how to do it. We're approaching this from a perspective of our current ones are definitely broken. We all agree on that. We can build new ones. This is tools and technology that allows us to build new ones. We can take these immediate steps right now that can have profound impacts on our lives, and then we get to go through a process of continually evolving and improving on these systems so that we can find even better ones. And we're going to always say they're completely broken right now, but maybe they're just a little bit better than what we're currently used to. Yeah.
And see,
it's a whole other rabbit hole.
Yeah. So speaking to you now, right? Grab a water. Speaking to you now, it makes me smile, right? Because you see, because you have such a wonderful appreciation in depth of the whole process. but you're one of the people which is also able to communicate that in such a way that each answer kind of gives you that context, the depth of it coming to the surface. So whoever's listening to this will gain a deeper appreciation of what it is, the challenges that these sorts of projects would face, and potentially, start to stoke that consciousness of, for some people don't perhaps think about so much about the economy or our political system or the way that we're governed or the input or impact our vote has or doesn't have upon that system itself. So through going through this, it's cool because I think what I'm feeling, and I believe other people will be feeling it too, is just this important understanding to ask that three-lettered word, why. Why do I do this? Why do I think like this? Why is it like this? And if we can do that, actually, that's already a huge service to mankind, right? Because we're giving people the opportunity to think about what they're doing and the impacts of what they're doing and so on. So that's one thing that I just want to acknowledge you for, man. It's super cool. So thank you for that. So what comes into my mind next is so maybe what are some of the biggest challenges, right, that you're facing now? I mean, for the people which are listening, I get, that they understand that there's a definite intention to this. I get they understand that this is also an experiment, and thank you for being so honest and open and just saying that, right? Because sometimes people come from this dogmatic point of view of, I know best, I know what this is, and this is how it's going to go, where you're coming from honesty and authenticity and saying, well, look, actually, we don't know, and we're learning as we go, and it's an experiment, right? So which is, again, to me, it just engages me more, because then I think that I'm dealing with somebody who's actually being honest and not pretending that they know everything when they don't, right? So that's super cool. So some of the biggest challenges that you're facing now, what would they be?
Well, thank you for all of that.
Welcome, my brother.
Biggest challenges. I think I'm going to highlight one. It's just the learning curve. And because we want way more wisdom being brought into these early level projects, but there's so much context that someone needs to gain in order to actually start having wisdom to be able to really be part of the governance process, right? So that's really the biggest challenge, opportunity, game is... Because any challenge we come to, we get to rethink how we actually approach that with civilization. Because civilization is always going to have these challenges. So one meta way we want to approach it is we want to turn everything into a game. So to put this into perspective, any one of us, I don't know who actually enjoys this, I do, but on a weekend we'll get a board game, sit it down, you look at the rules. It's a completely different way of engaging with the different players. They have a different rule set, they have different words and lingo and all that, but any group can come together and have fun going through this new game, learning about this new game, and then playing it with each other. And that's a joyful process that people will take time off work to do. But then we go to work and we have these coordination tools at work that are really tedious, annoying, and hard to use. It's why aren't we building our productivity tools like board games? So this is how we're actually choosing to approach this challenge of helping people understand the nuances of this system, is turning into a game. So we've kind of taken Jumanji meets Regeneration meets a new paradigm university and kind of plugging it all together, so that people can step into this new world, not feel overwhelmed by all the complexity happening, but go through this joyful process of discovering this new place that they've landed. Because that's one of the memes that we really like is, we're not creating this new system so much as we've kind of crash landed our boat on a new island, and now we're discovering, the features of this island. So as we continue to go through decentralized governance and what it means to have all these different voices at the table, you're not sitting there, making milestones anymore. A typical company says, we know where we're going. This is our strategy team. These are our 4 milestones for the next year. We know how to get there, and they make a plan, right? We're kind of approaching this we have no idea where we're going. We're kind of navigating this together, and now we're looking for landmarks. So we take time to go and maybe get a view of all the different changing circumstances as the landscape continues to emerge, and then we try to map out what's changing. We try to help people get to where we're at, so we're mapping the path to us. But then it's more of a process of discovery rather than a process of creation. I don't know if that lands, but that's something that's been really helpful for us, is that we're not creating these tools, we're discovering them together. And that's another challenge, is like how to get out of our heads thinking that we're in control here. So that's a big ego thing, and it's really great because a lot of the people who have showed up have been already doing work on that for many years. So it's like, how do we get out of our own way, where we think we're the ones driving this, like get rid of the thoughts that we have, and then be more open to seeing what's actually out there and how the system's evolving, and then be more willing to just map that out and share it as we're discovering it.
The more I listen, right, the more I get an appreciation of the depth of not only this, but you as well, right? This fasting, this, understanding of what you referred to as, some particular stories, right? The armed forces and that side of it, which is not understanding the whole thing, but understanding those particular, I guess, lines of questioning for me anyway. But the thing which I'm also getting awareness of is that, it's this being comfortable with challenge, right? I was reading something the other day. I think I was on YouTube or something. And I was looking around. I don't remember who it was, but it was a guy, as an entrepreneur who was out there doing it, and he was saying something like, as an entrepreneur or someone who creates stuff, like if you're not feeling challenged a lot, right, then in a way you're actually going backwards. He didn't quite say it like you're going backwards. That's my interpretation of it. I think he would say something like, if you don't feel like you're challenged now, then there's a bigger mountain waiting for you down the road, right? It's almost like if you're like, sailing. There's a big mountain coming your way, so watch out. And living in this state of like challenge, right? So you mentioned it before as being one of the things of change and all the rest of that. But how are you able, to, because there's quite a few people involved in Seeds and Hypha as well. But how is that group consciousness, how is it being allowed to perhaps take on that understanding of challenges here? It's a good thing. This is an experiment. All we're going to do is grow with it, grow through it, and come out the other side better.
I don't.
You knew this was when you knew this was coming. Maybe not this, but whenever you sit down, you're like, he's going to ask me, because it's not me asking these questions, right? They just
no. This is great. To preclude this, I don't look at challenge from a utilitarian perspective, meaning like, what am I going to get out of this? And if I'm not being challenged, I'm not growing or something like that. It's more like, this is the game of life. Like any game that we play, if it's not challenging enough, we get bored really easily. So it's like, challenge is fun. It's why we're here. It's what we've showed up to do. And I think on one level, it's kind of what humanity's done on a meta scale, is we've created the biggest challenges that we could ever face as a humanity to have the most fun figuring out how to actually address them. It's just how I look at it, and it makes this more engaging and fun. It's like, okay, so we basically set up the board and been like, okay, climate collapse, political unrest, economic instability, like we're going to poison all of our food at the same time so people's brain capacities are reduced. Ooh, that's going to be really hard. We like created this like really, really intensely challenging scenario so that we could rise to the occasion and we can evolve and up level. Because as we, face bigger challenges, we evolve. We unlock better capacities within ourselves to actually take on those challenges. So I do think that's kind of what we're doing here. So that's how I approach it, but that's one perspective in the whole Hypha seed sphere, and everyone else has their own perspective at challenge. Some people look at challenge as something that needs to be solved and get rid of, that it's bad. If we're facing tension, we need to resolve it because I don't like tension. And that's part of the whole spectrum of collective intelligence, is you're bringing all the different perspectives together, and it's incredibly chaotic, but through that chaos is where the creativity is born and new things are found. So this is a lame example, but you take stones that are all sharp and jaggedy and you put them in a tumbler and knock them together and they all get smooth and polished, right? And that's kind of what's happening in this process, is everyone's coming with their perspectives that they're really used to, and they're getting jarred and pushed against everyone else. And we get rid of the typical hierarchy you see in companies where someone can come in, own a title, and then their perspective is just king. And they get to, dominate people because they have a title to dominate. But once you get rid of those titles and people can't dominate with a title, all of a sudden now it's like, oh, well, now I have to figure out a new way way of like getting my opinion across. Maybe I have to figure out how to inspire people rather than just manipulate them. You know, maybe I have to figure out that I have to actually understand my idea rather than just, I think I understand my idea and I'm going to tell people what to do, which is often what happens in the old paradigm. Like, people don't even really know what they're doing. They haven't thought about it good enough, but they're just kind of acting. So when you get put into this situation, you actually have to, you know, sell other people on your idea. Then you have to go through the process of understanding your idea on your own. And then typically that process, people are like, oh, well, my idea actually wasn't that great now that I've thought about it. You know, so it forces people to actually go through that. And I've appreciated this so much because there's so many ideas that even I've had, well, I say even as if that's something great, but that I've had that I thought were really freaking good ideas. And then I put them into the tumbler and they come out so much better and way different than what I came in with. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. Really glad I didn't do what I was going to do, you know? So that it's really great, but it is really challenging, and it can be nerve-wracking to people who want to view it as a challenge, as something that needs to be solved, because then it's very tense and it causes a lot of anxiety. So unfortunately, because of that, we've lost like half the audience that are going to be really good for Hypha, because the people who aren't comfortable with that situation, they tend not to stay around very long. So we have one type of person who does thrive in chaos, and that's typically who's showed up to Hypha at these early stages. So that's one of our other challenges is, okay, we've been thriving in chaos. We've only attracted people who thrive in chaos. Cool. So that means we've got one perspective of the world, and we're missing a completely other half of this perspective, which people who thrive when it's a nurturing, calm environment. Some people call this the masculine and feminine, or yin yang, or whatever. But the idea is that's one of our other challenges, is to actually evolve to the next stage where we can have a more balanced, nurturing environment that is less chaotic, that can give people a little bit more security. Even if it's false security, sometimes it's still helpful to feel like there's more stability here.
You know, like that word nurture just kind of jumped in, and you know, she's sitting opposite us. I won't drag her into this one, but I kind of will. In other words, that means. But I think Cece, you have an amazing ability to do that. Actually, you know, the time that I spent with you in that collective environment, you know, you are that voice, that nurturing, getting warm tingles, that nurturing energy that comes over everyone, and you do it through your food, which is amazing. By the way, this. Oh, Mamma Mia, amazing. All right, yes, girl. Like, do it through your food. You do it through the way you speak, the way you interact with people. Like, you fulfilled that part actually of that puzzle, which is really interesting, because, you know, one of the things which I also love about the way that this is moving and evolving is that it's this acknowledgement and understanding that, you know, it's invite only. It's, you know, instead of inviting Silicon Valley to come on in and take a big steak and da-da-da-da, it's about instilling, you know, those values in the DNA of it. So by the time it does get out, you know, it's the DNA of it is wired so deeply that it can't be erased. You know, that it can't be manipulated in the way that a lot of things do these days, and we've spoken about the traditional economy. So on that, what kind of skips into my head is that, you know, it's something which is much bigger than any one person, which is why it's decentralized, right? And it's all over the world, okay? Costa Rica, you know, all these different countries, it's already there. So this question isn't from a perspective of neediness, but from literally, it's about contribution, right? So how can people, good night, having fun there, how can people contribute to you, contribute to Seeds? If they're watching this now, they've understood some of it, most of it, half of it, and they're interested, right? There's a fire that's been stoked, been lit, they've been reminded of something that's like, you know what, I really do need to pay attention to this. So how can the people who are on that level contribute to what's happening right now?
I always like taking a step back, because maybe Seeds isn't the best way to contribute anyway. Seeds is what we have this phrase we call it the Regenerative Renaissance. You know, preceding the medieval Renaissance was the Black Plague that kind of gave catalyst to a different way of building civilization, and humanity shifted dramatically at that time. I think we're doing the same thing right now. We call it the Regenerative Renaissance. It's a complete rethinking of how civilization is going to engage with this world, right? So seeds is one way of doing that. And if you're really into new financial systems, governance, like building alternative organizations and anything of that nature, like cool, yeah, come in and play with seeds and Hypha. But maybe that's not the best way you can show up to this Renaissance. Maybe you don't care about any of these things. And my suggestion to you would be like, find out what your passion is, find out what your purpose is, and then really attune to that, because that's what this new civilization I think is going to really hone in on, is helping people uncover their purpose and passion and then show up that way. That to me is like the most beautiful world we could ever be in, is if everyone's like tapping into what their purpose is and creating from that space. Like everything they create is going to be orders of magnitude more beautiful than the stuff we're creating out of a place of coercion. Right? So if we have a culture where everyone's doing that, like it's like all the furniture is going to be the most beautiful furniture because the person who built it wanted to build that, right? The food's going to be the healthiest food that was grown with love and made with love. Like everything society needs to operate, somebody loves doing that, and it's their passion. And I think we need a culture that really encourages that and sets that up. So we don't necessarily need everyone coming into seeds unless that's what you want to do. On a very surface level, you could support it just by adopting it, saying, you know, I'm going to start taking payments and using seeds as a payment. That's like the very simplest way that people could support seeds, is just using this instead of dollars. We don't need people to do it because, you know, to be completely honest, Hypha has more funding right now than we really actually know entirely what to do with. We still have to figure out our governance protocols to be able to handle that amount. So we're not asking anyone to like come in like we need your money. It's kind of the opposite. It's more, you know, if you feel really inspired to show up at this stage, awesome. And we're not actually selling anything either. It's more like a proposal. It's saying like, if this is what you love doing and you want to go on this journey with us, like our arms are open, let's go on that journey. This is going to be fun. If this isn't like a full F yes to you, then that's totally fine, you know. And it's not, you know, seeds isn't here to actually be the solution for everyone on the planet either. There's a subset of people out there that really see this, they love this, and these are the people that we need because it's decentralized governance like we're talking about. They're the ones that are going to be steering the ship and driving it and evolving it and governing it. So that's why it's invite only, is because we're actually, and invite only with a cost. We kind of did everything backwards. Instead of like paying people and setting up all these incentives to invite people, they said you have to like pay some money to invite somebody. So we wanted to make sure that everyone joining this was really committed to it and they loved it because they're the ones in control of it. So I mean, yeah, that's the best way. If any of this lights you up, you know, then great, come build with us. Let's redesign what civilization could look like. Fun. If not, then my suggestion is figure out what your passion is, figure out what your purpose is, and then just do that. Like forget everything else civilization's telling you to do right now, and you know, trust that life's going to take care of you if you start tapping into what, you know, you really want to bring into the world. And I feel like it does. I was talking a little bit about a UBI in action, and like if you actually give people the basic needs they need to survive and then let them tap into whatever their purpose is, they're invariably going to add value to civilization. You don't have to coerce people to add value. It's what we want to do. We want to give our gifts to the world. So we just want to create the environment to, you know, encourage that.
Got it, brother. Thank you, my man. That's you're almost done. Yeah, you're almost there. So the guys here, remember, we have a studio audience, right? So every week you can come. 6:30 we start, have some water, chill out, right? You can meet this beautiful man or whoever's in a hot seat. Call it the hot seat. It's a warm seat. Maybe it's a cool seat, right? Which is a beautiful part of it because, you know, part of this is about, you know, what happens here. Part of this is about what happens between us and you looking in and you can see what's going on. But a big component of this as well is the people that you meet, and this happens, you know, during and after. So if you are in the area, make sure you come. If there's something that lights you up that particular week, it could be a topic, it could be a person, it could be something about it, don't like resist it, just come, right? Because there's a reason for you being here, as there's a reason for you watching. If you are right now, there's a reason for you watching this as well, right? So what we're going to do is, so if anyone has a question, so this microphone, well, another microphone over there with Ichi's holding, we can just put your hand up and we can bring it to you. So with these ones here, just point it in the direction of your mouth. It's a directional mic, and then just ask your question, and then we can ideally have Rieki answer it. We'll just take a few questions, and then after that we'll wrap it up for this week, and we'll be back next week. So, anyone here have any questions?
Hi. You guys mentioned that you guys did a lot of experiments, and it's a very experimental type of approach in trying on all these things to reinvent civilization. But since it's a decentralized organization, who then gets to decide whether the experiment is a success or not? And what's the process like? Does the experiment, is there a deadline to when do we find out what's the outcome of the experiment, or the community kind of just decides on its own where it plays out?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Depends on what the experiment is. You set up the parameters. But either way, generally speaking, it's all happening in real time. Meaning we have one protocol that says we're going to mint new money when there's new demand for it. But someone might say, hey, you know what? Here's my reasoning, but I think we should mint new money at a 1% inflation rate because let's have more money because we can. And then they debate it with the community. They put it up for a proposal. If that proposal passes, then the protocol changes. So now all of a sudden we're minting new money. So we're living the experiment real time while it's happening. And then, a month later, it could be like, hey, that was a really bad experiment. This is why it's a bad experiment. Someone else comes up and says, hey, we should change it to this. And that's debated. And if it's passed, then it's adopted. That might sound incredibly chaotic, but the passing threshold is an 80% unity. So at least 80% of the network's got to be like, yeah, that's an experiment worth trying. If it's a really fundamental protocol, then it's like 90% unity. Meaning 90% of the network's got to be like, yes, this is worth trying. So we got rid of the whole 50-50 bit because 50-50 is so broken. Like you could see that in the States. If 50% is all it takes to like make a decision, then at any point the other half of the population is gonna be pissed off. That's a terrible like unity threshold to go for if you're trying to create like a cohesive community. So we thought we could take it much higher. So we have it like 80-90. But anyway, that's how experiments work. Real time. We're trying them out. We're living them, and we're constantly changing and evolving. Yeah.
Thank you.
Did that actually answer it?
Yep.
Cool.
So, Kedar, yeah.
Thanks. I apologize for my phone ringing.
We never heard it here, mate. Ask your question. Ask your question. It's all right.
Yeah. So, with the way politics works, right? Everybody knows. Is the 80-20 principle, and people making decisions are just the 20% of the people, maybe less than 20%. And then with this decentralized governance, that means everybody has to be equally participant in the whole process of, political system and governance and everything. But if you look at many countries, right, there is no education with what politics is. Many of our learned people who are going to offices don't know how the MP is elected, don't know how the whole political system of our own country works. And there's a big percentage of these people. So now, this is a totally different governance system. So how is the transition?
Yeah, so that was one of our big challenges, is definitely education. So some people look at seeds and say, hey, this is incredibly complex. How could people ever learn this? But when compared with our current governance systems, it's orders of magnitude less complex. So it's actually a lot easier to understand what's happening here than figuring out the old ones. So fortunately, the learning curve is less there. But this is also where other tools like delegation come in. So instead of expecting everyone to look into every proposal, we give people the ability to delegate their voice. And we separate out on topics. So just here's one way of helping us remap how we could do governance. Every proposal falls into a category. Let's say this one's for housing, this one's for healthcare, this one's for food, right? And then what you get to do is you have a different voice in each category, or you can delegate your voice to somebody else to represent you in each category. So you could be like, well, I really trust this person on food because they're a permaculturist and I love them, so they're going to get my voice for my food vote. This person's really smart with housing, so I'm going to give my housing vote to him. I care about economics, so I'm going to keep my voice for economics, and I'm actually going to learn about those proposals and vote. So we start having this like delegation that could be very dynamic. So instead of waiting 4 years to elect a politician to elect you maybe, and maybe it's not going to work, you can delegate and undelegate your voice at any time. So then it creates this like decentralized politician, because we create wards that people are delegating for you. We think anyway, it doesn't matter. Point is that now at any point you can change your voice and who you want to represent you. So you still have the benefits of a representative democracy where you don't have to take all the time to figure out every decisions, but it gets more nuanced and it gives you the ability to change at any moment. So I think that's a little bit helpful, because then people can just say, like, look, I'm going to trust these 10 people with different points, and then I'll give my voice to them. And then they can, you know, kind of slowly step their way in while still being represented, at least how they want to be.
Yeah, I mean, with all of this happening, there should also be this parallel education system which is going on, because otherwise nobody would understand and use it.
Definitely, and I'm glad you brought that up, because this is kind of an announcement, is we're running what's called Renaissance University. Seeds has funded this, so to give you an idea of governance, a group got together and said, hey, we want to put on a university that's better than free. We're going to teach all these new tools and the philosophy surrounding it. We want to give all these lectures, bring in really cool people on the topics, and we want to put this course on and pay people at the end of it for attending. The Seeds community is like, yep, we really like that idea. They passed it. Right now it's started beginning of February, and we had like 400% more signups than we could. So sign up for it now, and you're going to be in the next couple courses. But that's how, is we need to have better than free university systems too. We need to be teaching this, you know, unpacking all of the different tools of this Renaissance, how they can get involved. And really the idea with this course that's starting is people will show up, they learn about decentralized economics, governance, organizations, local food systems, all the tools that are available for them, not just Seeds and Hypha, but everything else out there in the movement. Basically giving them everything they need to set up a local node themselves. Start the Renaissance where they're at, empower people, and get going. So it's kind of like a boot camp, so to speak, to help people understand what's going on here. And what's cool is you get to fully embody the new paradigm ethics and pay people to go through this, because civilization should be paying people for learning how to improve civilization. Like, that's just a very positive, healthy feedback loop that ought to exist. What's really cool is we have our own financial systems. So just to when anyone joins a new financial system, they add more value to that network. This is with any network. For example, like a mobile network, if there's only 2 phones on that network, it's not very valuable. But every person who joins the network, everyone in that network gets more value. When there's 3 phones, everyone increases their value, right? So it has the inverse effect where more value is grown depending on how many people join. The same is true of a financial system, meaning every new person who joins that system brings more value to the system than the last. Bitcoin is super inflated, but for every daily active user of Bitcoin, they bring $250,000 worth of value to the network. It's a little bit ridiculous. National currencies are anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000. Why am I telling you this? Because that means we could pay anywhere between $5,000 and $50,000, or maybe $250,000 if we're inflated, to get someone else to understand the network and actually join it. So rather than burning this money on marketing, which might be one approach, we're taking this money and literally gifting it to people, helping them like set up the understanding, or setting up systems for them understanding what's going on here. So this is where the Better Than Free University is one approach. Let's literally pay people to join this network and grow value together. This creates a positive feedback loop where we have even more value to keep getting more universities and blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
And you know, thank you for answering the question and telling us about Renaissance University. It's powerful, and it brings me on to one of the other things which I love about the platform is that, you know, it's open to all. And you know, for example, maybe you can talk us through this, but you know, if I have, you know, a service which is regenerative to the environment in some way, shape, or form, I can introduce that to the platform with Seeds. The citizens can vote on that, and depending how many seeds or how much, let's say money, let's call it money for now, I need to raise to ensure that that thing is built or done or produced or delivered, you know, that the citizens can vote on that, and if the vote is to the positive, then it can also be funded.
Yeah, definitely. So what's happening real time right now, we've been doing it for the past year and continuing to evolve on this, is we have a pool of money sitting aside for anyone to be able to come up and put up a proposal what to do with this money. How do we grow the movement with the money that we have to grow the movement with? So that's what he's mentioning, that anyone can come and run a campaign. We've had dozens successfully run so far, anywhere from subsidizing people going out there and planting trees to, you know, paying people to do this university and everything in between. So that's one test of decentralized governance, is anyone could show up. The citizens are actually the ones deciding what we should pass. The same thing for what we call alliance shares. What we want to build is a cooperative economy where everyone has a stake and incentive to grow this economy, grow it. So we set aside a good portion of the initial seeds, the currency, to give to all the organizations, networks, movements, platforms out there that are also serving this movement. So this is why I said that Seeds isn't the movement. Seeds is serving a movement to build a different culture. So are a lot of different people, platforms, organizations, businesses. There's thousands and thousands across the globe, right? Probably millions. And what we've done is we said, great, if you're already serving this, here's a pool of seeds that are here to gift you for all the stuff you've already done. And now you have a stake in this new financial system too. Invite your communities and grow wealth together. You know, and Bitcoin is showing real time how this can happen. You know, Bitcoin creates, okay, let me refactor the number since it's gone up fourfold since last time talking about it. But it creates around $20 billion each year of Bitcoin. My math might be a little bit off. And it spends about $5 billion each year on electricity fees, because that's just how the economic system's set up. But here it is, an alternative economic system that's only been around for 10 years, doesn't really have that much adoption or use case, and it's still able to generate $20 billion worth of new currency to distribute for something. Right now it's distributing it to miners who are burning electricity, but we could distribute that in any way we can imagine. We can say, well, we just want to give it to people who are planting trees or making gardens, or we want to give it to all the companies who are helping actually use and adopt and grow this currency system. So this is where we can start paying people who are actually participating in it. So rather than the only way to make money in Bitcoin is by setting up a miner, you know, what if you could actually get paid in Bitcoin for every time you're using Bitcoin? We can make it better than free currency. So this is like the ideas we've actually approached with Seeds. Is I think I went down a different rabbit hole than what you guys asked.
But again, here's the thing, right? The questions are there to trigger a response. The response that comes up is exactly what was meant to happen. That's it. So you don't have to worry about following the questions at all, actually. They're just there to trigger. So, so look, pretty soon we're gonna wrap this one up. But what I want you to think about, Rieki, is that, you know, if there's anything else that's in your awareness that you'd love to say or love to contribute as a closing, right? And then what we'll do in about a minute or so, we'll hear what that is. It might be, you know, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, however long you need, brother. And it might be, you know, simply repeating something that you've said already, or perhaps there's something in your mind that, hey, I haven't mentioned that. That's the thing that I want people to get, what I want to leave people with. Or it could be something that CC reminds you. It could be that as well, that's fine too. Now, for the rest of you guys, so remember, it's a new time, so 6:30. Every Monday here at Tropical Nomad. Just thanks a lot, guys, to Itchy, usually it's Bella, but today's Guzman as well, for helping us to do this. It's a great collaboration, and that's actually, I am an ambassador for Seeds, full disclosure, and the bit which I love about it, or part of what I love about Seeds, is its collaborative nature in a project that is uplifting humanity. So that's part of why I love it. So look, remember, next week, who have we got? We've got David, who is the founder of Yogi Lab. Right now, Yogi Lab, for those of you who don't know it, you can check it out on Google. It's an amazing platform that they've built. 15, 20,000 people a month go through just through their meditation programs alone. Like, he's a phenomenal business. He's a phenomenal guy who I don't even know, but I've got a feeling that his energy is beautifully aligned to what we're doing here, which is about uplifting humanity and connecting people together in like-minded communities, all right? So, having said that, thank you also for studio audience. Remember, I love you guys to come simply because, you know, like, the studio audience, after we're done here, there's conversation that goes on between themselves, the audience, and by the way, if you are in the audience and you spotted someone who you just, I don't know, like attracted to for any reason, please go and say hi and just introduce yourself and say hello and ask them, what did you get out of this evening? What did you learn out of this evening if you need to break the ice? If you don't, then just go straight to it. And in the meantime, so 6:30 to about 7:30, 8, that's what time we're here. And I'm going to hand on now to Rieki to close us out. And before I do that, I just want to thank you for accepting the invitation to come on, for spreading the love. And mate, you're an amazing guy, man. And that hyperlectual, love you, brother. You know, that hyperlectual comment just came out from somewhere, but it works. Maybe
careful with that.
Yeah, I know, maybe not use it too often. But there you go. So look, my brother, I'll leave this with you. Thank you so much, my man. And I love what you're doing. Love you. You have an incredible way to inspire us all by having a thought like this and including people in a decentralized way to contribute to it, to create an incredible platform. So thank you so much, my man.
Thank you. And just love hanging out with you. So thank you for the space that you hold and the energy you bring. I'm not the one holding this vision at all. This is a vision that's coming through hundreds and thousands of people across the globe right now. I'm just playing a little part in this, so I appreciate that, but this isn't my vision that I'm holding. Last piece. This is the advice I always love giving: is plant a garden. That's the best way to get healthy food. Is all food puts out, all living beings for that matter, put off energy and light. You can track it. It's called biophotons. All plants are putting off this light too. This is pure energy, right? Within 4 hours of anything picking a plant before you actually eat it, it's not putting off that light, that energy anymore. And throughout all of evolution, we evolved from plant to mouth, right? We went from bush to bush and tree to tree. We found food and we ate it, and now we've completely reverse engineered our systems to be broken. And we're not getting that vital energy anymore. So it's a complete game changer in how fast our brains can work and how healthy we are and our capacity to show up in the world when we start giving ourselves the vital energy and nutrition that it's been probably missing for our whole lives. So that's the biggest fundamental shift that anyone can make, is try to localize your food as much as possible, and if not, grow it yourself and eat it. It's awesome. Second, get an invite from Rob. If you'd like to get into this, you're watching one of his platforms, I'm sure, just send him a message, tell him that you want to get an invite, and he can send you one. Finally, that's it. And if you want to get involved in any capacity, reach out to him. He can send you our Discord, which is this crazy, chaotic place where a lot of wisdom's coming together, and you can have a lot of fun in there. And yeah, if you want to build this with us, come on in. And someone will give you a hand when you show up if you ask for it. There's a lot of really awesome people there to help navigate all the new people into this system and figure their way. So, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Round of applause. Thank you so much. Yeah.